Hi students, and welcome to this rather impromptu tutorial video dealing with the most recent essay assignment over the first Q3 argumentative essay of the year. In class we started looking at a very unique way of planning out this assignment, planning your essay, that is, using the Toulmin model statements that we studied a couple of weeks ago. This is the first time I've ever tried to do something like this. It's kind of been ruminating in my mind for a while that because so many students have so much trouble making the argument the focus of their paper rather than what they usually do, making the evidence the focus. I've always wanted to do something that clearly demonstrates the lines of reasoning in your paper before you start writing it. And so this the Toulmin model exercise is one that I just kind of came up with literally in a dream. I woke up one morning and it hit me. And I realize now that the instructions that I printed out are maybe not 100% clear. So I wanted to go over once more here exactly how I would go through planning a Q3 timed essay. And I'm actually going to use the one that we've assigned here. Please keep in mind that if you choose to borrow any of the claims that I make to use in your own essay, I know where they came from, okay? So I know that you can borrow one of my claims and explain it in your own words and explain it with your own evidence, and that's original enough that, you know, I'm not going to dock you points. But don't take any of my claims if you don't really understand them. Please use your own original work that you understand is all I'm going to say. So let's take a look at the essay assignment really quickly. This is the Mencken assignment, the Mencken prompt. The average man does not want to be free, he simply wants to be safe. Okay, so we discussed this in class. According to Mencken, the average man desires his own personal security, his own personal safety over any kind of freedom. We looked at this kind of in depth. We took a look at some examples that you guys came up with. So let's start working out the actual logic that we're going to use. So the first step in that series of developing an argument using the Toulmin models is to come up with what I called a simple open thesis statement. And that simple thesis statement really has to be simple. You know how I told you most of these questions ask you to defend, challenge, or qualify some idea? Well, that's basically what this particular prompt is doing. Defend, challenge, or qualify whether or not the average man does not want to be free. It's basically what examining the extent of is. So the simple thesis needs to literally just be a response to defending, challenging, or qualifying this idea. So I think I, like a lot of you, but not all of you, I'm going to defend with some qualification with this quote. The average man does prefer to be safe rather than free. So here is my very simple thesis statement. I could just say that an individual is often willing to sacrifice personal freedoms for his or her security. That's it. Or let's be more specific to the prompt, safety. There we go. Cool. So that's what I mean by a simple thesis. This isn't specific enough to put in our final paper, but it's going to guide how we plan out our arguments. So the next step is, after we've identified the general direction our essay is going in, the next step in our planning is to come up with what I call different angles of examination. And that's basically just the different supporting claims that we're going to make in support of our thesis. Remember, the thesis is supported by your supporting claims, and your supporting claims are supported by individual arguments, and that makes for a nice, wholly supportive and wholly coherent essay. So this is how I like to plan out my supporting claims. And I just have my thesis, and then I just put a little ellipses here, and I do some because statements. An individual is willing to sacrifice personal freedoms for his or her safety because of why? Let's say because being secure or being safe has more tangible / immediate value. Okay, and I don't need to be too specific yet because I'm just coming up with some reasons, but you know, being safe, I guess, it's just more immediately obvious in its value. Having freedom is not necessarily vital to survival, but being safe is. If you look at something like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's true. And so while freedom is kind of an idealistic thing that we all want, safety is kind of the actual tangible thing that we have to have. And so that's my first one. Okay? An individual is often willing to sacrifice personal freedoms for his or her safety, but I want 4 of these at least. Because of that, because of, let's go with the biological reasoning here, because humans, like all animals, desire to preserve their species. Okay, that's one reason why we'd rather be safe than free, is just purely for the propagation of a species. That's a nice little biological argument. Thirdly, because society, like the formation of a society, is dependent on its citizens sacrificing personal freedoms. That's kind of just a premise of any society, is to be a part of society you must give up certain personal freedoms, and so for any society to develop, its citizens must do so. And let's see, one more, because the fourth, because let's just use the classic human nature, because it is human nature to sacrifice personal freedoms for safety. There we go. So now I've got my 4 supporting claims in support of my thesis. Now from here, I'm going to take each one of these supporting claims and develop them one at a time using a couple of different Toulmin model sentences. These are those model sentences we learned a couple weeks ago that started with because of my support, therefore my claim, since whatever the warrant or assumption is. And let's just do some of the simple 3-part Toulmin model sentences. You can do some of the, that's just what I'm going to do with my examples. You can get into using some reservations and qualifications and that sort of thing, some backing if you want. But for the purposes of my example here, I'm just going to get into the simple kind. So in the instructions, it said to use the simple thesis you created in the claim slot of your first Toulmin model sentence. Okay, so let's start with the one I'm going to do for example. Let's just do this final one. Because it is human nature to sacrifice personal freedoms for safety. I'm going to develop a Toulmin model sentence using this as my support and this as my claim. Okay, and I do this just to make sure that my claim logically supports my my thesis statement. So let's put this together. Because it is, I don't need to write all that down again or type it in. Because it is human nature to sacrifice personal freedoms for safety, comma, therefore, remember I said pull your simple thesis into your claim spot. Therefore, an individual is often willing to sacrifice personal freedoms for his or her safety, since that which is human nature often drives what a person is willing to do. Okay, and that's logically valid. Okay, that is my first Toulmin model sentence, and again, that is the model sentence just verifying that this particular angle of examination in support of my thesis, that it does in fact support it. Okay, so that is the Toulmin model sentence that I would put in the chart under whatever angle I've chosen. This was my 4th angle. Okay, so I put it right here. I paste it really small because it's a really small box. There. Cool. Awesome. So I've just pasted that. That is the first Toulmin model sentence, and that just proves that my thesis, which I didn't write in here, there we go. That just proves that this human nature argument is logically supportive of this. It's not very clear yet. That's what this next Toulmin statement's going to kind of provide me with. But it's at least I know that it's logically in support of my simple thesis statement, which is something that so many students mess up on these Q3 questions. Okay? So now let's develop our next Toulmin model sentence for our argument. Okay? And this is basically going to help us clarify exactly how our claim supports our thesis. It's going to be just the argument that proves this claim. Okay? Once again, returning to the instruction sheet, it says that in this next Toulmin model sentence, I need to pull the support from my previous Toulmin model sentence, which is because it is human nature to sacrifice personal freedoms for safety, and put that in my claim slot, which is the therefore slot. Okay? Uncapitalize that because I'm in the middle of the sentence. Now all I need to do is come up with some support for this new claim. It is human nature to sacrifice personal freedoms for safety. Why is it human nature to sacrifice personal freedoms for safety? Why is this true is what I need to look for. I think I'm going to say this is true and kind of argue it inductively by saying because, oh, here we go again. Here we go. Because people throughout history have made this sacrifice. Okay, that's a really simple inductive reason, to indicate that it is in fact human nature. If people throughout history, let's make this even stronger, often have made this sacrifice. Because people throughout history have often made this sacrifice, therefore it is human nature to sacrifice personal freedoms for safety. And my underlying warrant or my assumption here would be since historical tendencies in society are, or rather reflect what is human nature. There, something like that. Now, you might be looking at this and thinking to yourself, well, that's not really a very good argument. I don't really care how good it is yet. All I care about is how valid it is. Okay, how valid. Let's read this. Because people throughout history often have made this sacrifice, meaning the sacrifice of personal freedoms for safety, therefore it is human nature to sacrifice personal freedoms for safety, since historical tendencies in society reflect what is human nature. It's not really a very good argument. It sounds very stilted. There's still a lot of questions, but that's what I'm going to take care of in kind of the next part of my planning stage, when I outline it, when I start pulling in specific evidence. Just looking at this Toulmin model sentence, the statement that would probably need some specific evidence to support would be this. I would need to support my support here, basically. I would need to back this up with some specific evidence that people throughout history have often made this sacrifice. And I could point at, thinking of several different civilizations throughout history that have done this. And so what this does, doing this Toulmin process, is it sets up my logic before I even start considering examples to prove my logic. And that forces my paper to be argument-driven rather than example-driven. What too many students do is they start their thesis, or they'll establish a thesis, and then they'll do something like this to help plan out their essay. Because of the Russian Revolution. Because of the Enlightenment. And that doesn't really make any sense, and it makes sense in their minds, and I can kind of see where they're coming from, but typically what happens is their papers, because they're so evidence-focused, their papers fail to make any kind of clear arguments. They'll basically just make a claim that an individual is often willing to sacrifice personal freedoms for his or her safety because this one time in history, this one thing happened. And here, let me give you a 300-word synopsis history report about this. Well, that's nice that you know all that stuff, from your APUSH or AP World class or from just reading a lot, but that's not an argument. That's just a big old example for an argument you failed to provide. So, by planning out our essays using these two Toulmin model sentences, one that connects your claim back to your thesis, and the other that develops your claim into an argument, you can ensure that you have a very well thought out argument before you start writing. And so I'll just add that there because just to give this thing some closure. So I hope this video has helped you out from that previous class. I hope I didn't cause I don't think I confused a lot of people. I just maybe didn't help as many students with this as I would have liked. Again, I'm trying something pretty new here with this using Toulmin models for argument to plan out an argument. So I hope this did help you somewhat. Again, just keep playing around with this. Do it the order that I did it. Come up with your simple thesis first. Come up with 4 different reasons why your thesis is true. Your 4 different angles of examination. Okay. You compose a Toulmin model that makes sure that your claim and your angles of examination fully support or logically support your thesis, and then using the support from your first Toulmin sentence, use that as your claim for your next Toulmin sentence, and find how you're going to support that claim. Okay. Anyway, I hope this did help. Please come see me in tutorials as always if you need to run any ideas by me or you need some additional clarifications.